around and introduce yourselves so that we all know whose voice is who and kind of what your uh, involvement, if you can say, is, if you're allowed to say, is in the EE patch stuff?
Yeah, of course. So I'm the lead engineer on the project. I'm working at the FE for like a couple of years, and we were on this project when it was initially released, together with Skybox, but now we're without Skybox on this project. And I'm here together with Master of Freedom and Pitar, but he's not in this call yet, or he won't be showing up as well, because he's not that of a public speaker. At least that's what he told me. Otherwise, I would have invited him. I mostly worked on kind of everything of this patch, except for the balance. I'm not that much of a balance player. I'm really a casual Age of Mythology player, like with just big battles in the editor or playing knotted maps, for example. That's what I'm doing most of the time.
Thanks, that's Warrior Mario.
Who's next?
You can be next.
I can be next? Okay. Well, I'm Hagrid. I am a balance consultant on this patch. I've been since patch 2.7, I guess. Yeah. And I also made the map scripts, and that's about all my involvement.
Thank you. No, Todd?
I mean, other than testing.
Hello, I'm sure many of you have probably had the pleasure or displeasure of playing some of my maps. I am mainly a scenario designer, but I also make additional triggers and mods. I'm very excited to have been able to provide some ideas and testing for patch 2.8, and I'm hoping that many of the long-standing scenario issues has been resolved or added as triggers. Some of the exciting new things we've got with patch 2.8, we've got better unit editing, terrain editing, better performance on some triggers, lots of exciting things. So it's been great to be part of the project, and yeah, hopefully you may have played some of my maps. So keep designing, and over to the rest of you.
Thanks, no, Todd. Master of Freedom?
Sure. So I'm Master of Freedom, and I've been on with Forgotten Empires for 2.7 to 2.8, and I did some work on Definitive Edition 2, just as an engineer. I've been mainly working with the balance team and doing gameplay changes.
Wonderful. And I think we have Flame here as well.
Yeah, so I've been on the balance team since 2.7, so I've been just helping out with that and just testing the game, helping out where I can, making sure they fix the performance and shit, you know? So yeah, that's kind of my role, I guess.
Well, that is a fabulous segue into our first question. I think everybody wants to know what's being changed balance-wise and what 2.8 brings for people who have been having issues playing online specifically. So what can you tell us about what's been changed, and I guess, yeah, any information for people who are struggling that they could help to run their computers better in that regard as well.
All right. We did a couple of things. We looked a little bit into like what are the hotspots of the game currently, what is causing the performance issues from some people, and at some edge cases where the performance would be crippled by certain mistakes in the code. I've mostly been working on that. And found a couple of things, like in the rendering of the terrain, something went wrong with the caching, so it actually had to recalculate everything every frame. So that's noticeable when you zoom out a little bit and you see more of the terrain, and then things will be slowing down for most people, unless you have like a really good computer. Luckily enough for me, I have a super old laptop that I can do the development of. So I'm one of those low-end users, and I can actually profile what's actually causing real issues for the lower-end spec, as the game runs quite okay on modern hardware. Other than that, I looked a bit into the network lag compensation and tuned it a little bit so it would actually be more effective than what the original one did that Skybox implemented. And that seemed to have improved the multiplayer experience quite a bit. And you can see the difference quite a lot between the team games, like 3v3 team games, and the one on 2.8 patch right now. It's actually smooth from what I've seen so far. There were also some issues with the Steam API where it was doing some callbacks during the game, and that would actually hit your game as well. Those have also been resolved. And then all that together with some other miscellaneous fixes that has improved the performance. We have not improved the renderer performance besides the terrain rendering that much because we didn't have the time to look deeply into that, and like it might be a very big overhaul to actually fix that. We hope to ever fix it, but there's currently no plans to do that, so maybe in the future, who knows.
Okay, cool. I could say if there's anything more to add to that, Master of Freedom, or...
So another thing that was changed was the in-game DLC checking. One of the things that it used to do was every frame it would check every unit on the map and see if it was a DLC unit. And if it was a DLC unit, then it was supposed to allow you 10 of those units per player without DLC, and then it would kick you. And that's been completely removed. So number one, that's a really good feature that you no longer have the trader bug, where you would hit trader on, say, one of the myth units from China, and you would instantly get the pop-up screen that would kick you out of the game. That no longer occurs because the DLC unit checking has been removed, and so that's also another nice performance increase as well. So it's not checking every unit on the map, every
Sick.
frame.
I was unaware of that, but that sounds awesome to have experienced. I don't know if I quite picked this one up or not, but you mentioned that you
side effects.
Oh, go on. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, there's a bit of a delay on the stream.
That's all right.
Basically, what I was meant to say was a side effect of the unit checking is that it allows the scenario designers to use the DLC units in the game without there being a pop-up now. So previously, for scenario designers, you had to put only units that were not owned by players or players that were guaranteed to be China. So if you were making a Chinese-themed map, you could not give non-DLC players DLC units, otherwise it would kick those players out of the game. That's, as mentioned, has been now removed. So scenario designers who do own the DLC can now actually much more freely design without worries of DLC owners in multiplayer games being, people who don't have the DLC being present and being kicked out unfairly. So I think that's a great improvement. The single player checks are still there though, so you can't play single player maps without the DLC. But that makes much more sense.
Yes. Wonderful. Warrior Mario, you mentioned you've got a laptop, and I was just wondering, in regards to the issues that people who have integrated graphics who aren't running like gaming systems, things like Surface Pro 3s and just random laptops that might be able to play play the game. Is anything Can these are these able to be played on recommended to, or is there anything being done to suggest that people don't play on them if it's not possible?
Well, it's certainly possible, as you can see with the original game that just runs perfectly fine on those computers. But yeah, with the rendering changes that came in EE, yeah, it has become a bit of a challenge to do that. It's not impossible, I think, but we would have to have more time to look into that. And yeah, there's no plan to do that right now. There's also no plan to do for example, like some checking if you're like having a bad computer that you cannot play online on anything. Those things are mainly out of scope for this patch right now. So yeah, might be something for the future for us to look into, but yeah, currently no plans for that.
Okay, well that's cool.
Yeah, like a benchmark test, like in AoE2. That's what he means.
Yeah. If you're unaware, in Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition, in order to play ranked, you have to run a benchmark test. Otherwise, you're just not allowed to play ranked, which is a thing.
It's pretty good, right? Like, I think it would be really good for AOM too. Future, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's a good feature for definitely for ranked. Yeah.
Yeah.
Shall we move on? Let's talk about bug fixes. Is there any? Well, we'll start with what bug fixes that you're aware of that that you're working on that haven't been fixed. What bugs have you fixed? And I guess there's someone wanted to specifically know about the texture bug where your units turn white or disappear. So.
Yeah, so for that, we had the initial launch of the public beta, where we had some patch notes. But then afterwards, we've been continuing to work, and I've been maintaining like a silent patch note thread on Steam where you can see all the changes that we've done since then. Well, we might link that one in the chat, maybe during the stream or afterwards, so people can check it out. There's I think maybe like 50 or 100 extra changes for that, and specifically for the texture bug where units turn white or even disappear eventually. We have a potential fix for that one. I have not been able to reproduce it afterwards, but I have also not proven that it's completely gone. This was mainly because there was some leak with materials and models of the game. So after a while, you would run out of materials and models, and then yes, stuff stopped to render.
Okay. There you go. That sounds promising, I guess.
Yeah, so we fixed one of those leaks. It seemed to be the major one. So it might actually be gone after 2.8. But yeah, only one way to check is if it's actually gone is when the patch goes live and people never run into it anymore.
Cool. I reckon we move on to the exciting part about for a lot of players, the balance portion. I know there's a lot of fiery debate in the Age of Mythology forums about balance, because it's always it's really easy to complain about things that beat you. So I just want to see where you guys are at with what you think about the state of balance. So I guess this one's more directed towards Hagrid and Flame. And yeah, tell us what you think.
So I got the questions in front of me as well. So the first one is, with this patch, where do you see the state of the balance in this game?
Yeah.
So with 2.8, I didn't think we're gonna do too much in balance. We did a couple things, but mostly it was just to fix a couple mistakes we made previously, and then maybe tiny adjustments here and there. So it was not a huge changelog for balance. And
yeah. Like for example, like the set animals, like we buffed them by accident, like way too strong. So we just like tuned that back down, so it's more like, in line with Fugly. So it's very similar to what you're already used to. So it's nothing too big.
One of the bigger changes might be the Inferno God Power now actually respects damage limits that are put in the profile, where before it was just time-based, so it would do as much damage as it could during that amount of time, where now we were able to put in specific unit limits for how much villager damage it can deal out, how much building damage it can deal out, and unit damage. And basically the entire God Power was basically rewritten from the ground up, so it's no longer completely random.
Yeah, I would also like to add that you guys also changed the Tsunami God Power, which is pretty cool now, in my opinion at least. It like when you cast it, it just like picks up all the units and just bounces them elsewhere, like far away. So it does less damage, but it's more like a displacement ability, so it's pretty cool. It's also new.
Yeah, you have to check that one out to understand, because it does look really cool. So if you're not aware, check out the new Tsunami God Power.
Yeah,
I
for sure.
guess the most impactful changes have been to Chinese god powers in particular. Inferno, Great Flood has changed. Geysers can actually be placed straight under units now, which previously it couldn't. It would like partly avoid units, but now it can also be placed straight under. And what was it again? Oh, yeah, Imperial Examination was, I guess, fixed or tweaked, so that it now can build buildings like TCs faster. And what else was it? Towers?
Yeah, towers.
Yeah,
Towers and TCs. But on top of that, you get a small reduction in the duration of the god power.
And also there's a balance like an exploit. It's kind of like you can like check normally on Voogly and old versions you could check like animals in like Fog of War Array. You can like scout them and you can check settlements and stuff, you know. And that was fixed as well. So if you're using that trick, it's gone now. So you have to get used to that probably. But overall, I think it's more fair. So you can like kind of like low key map hack, you know. So
Yeah, that's always been a thing that you just did because it was there, but definitely if it wasn't there, I feel better about hunting. I always feel like I have to be really certain that I can defend, because I know that a really good player will know that I'm there, just because of those little tricks.
yeah, exactly. So
Yeah, and
it's a pretty nice fix.
There's a lot of changes that went into that with the Fog of War. Like you said, the town centers have been fixed, so now you can't do the foundation scouting, which is really nice. So you can't just try to build over it, and it'll always say that you can place it there until you get vision, and then it'll give you your resources back and everything. Same thing with the hunt and gold mines. You can no longer select them, or can always select them still until you get vision. So like if you task villagers on a gold mine that's no longer there, they'll go the whole way until they get there, and then they'll stop because it's no longer there. So the Fog of War now acts proper, like everything's still there until you gain new vision of it.
Yeah, so I actually have to scout now, which I like a lot. And talking about gold mines, by the way, dwarves don't get really stuck anymore in gold mines, so it's pretty nice too. I know it was like a big problem, right? So just wanted to add it in.
Yes,
It's a nice fix.
Units getting stuck in stuff is improved quite a bit from what I've heard, right?
Yeah.
Just in general, it's good.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. Like the original code of the pathing already had issues, as in the original game there was some problems with it as well, just not as much as in EE. But whenever you're working with pathfinding, because I've also been working on H2 pathfinding and H1 pathfinding, it's very delicate, and it's really some tangled mass of like checks for, okay, in this case, this specific case we need to do that, then in that specific case we need to use this algorithm. So it's quite dangerous to make changes, because they could break the game in several ways. But yeah, the change that we've done right now seems to have worked, and yeah, hopefully then most of the issues are gone.
Yeah, it's
But
pretty
it-
good.
Yeah, I am aware of some issues still, but fixing those were out of scope of this patch. So maybe in the future, but yeah, again, no plans for that as of now.
I mean, at least there's no more Ragnarok heroes stuck in a gold mine. It's kind of a waste, so that's nice.
Yeah, and most of these changes were literally caused by, well, in the original tools where the game were built with, those tools have changed, and there's some subtle change in those tools nowadays that caused most of the pathfinding issues. So, yeah, there's not really anyone to blame for that, but yeah, again, it's like super difficult to look into those issues, and it should be resolved. There should be some time spent into looking how it can completely be resolved. But yeah, there was no time, sadly enough, to make it perfect. And like with any Age game, the pathfinding wasn't perfect in the original game, most likely because the original devs didn't have infinite time to make it perfect in the past. Because in the end of the day, you need to ship, and then you need to make it as good as possible in a short amount of time.
Exactly. Let's talk about maps, if we don't mind. Hank, you
Maps have
said
not
you're
changed.
in the map. You go for it.
Yeah. Maps have not really. I have not changed any maps. The one thing about maps though is we added Blue Lagoon into the random map set, so that'll be a new addition.
So I
But yeah,
guess
that's
if you're
all,
not
I think.
aware of what Blue Lagoon is, it's a competitive map played on Voobly. It's just another land map, and everyone generally thinks it's good. So,
Yeah.
are there any plans to add more maps to the pool, or different maps, or maps with like unique effects? For example, I don't know, like the middle of the map speeds up your units. Anything like that in the future?
We would like to do that, but yeah, we still don't have any plans for the future right now. So maybe that's all I can say.
I like a good
How else
side
like that, by the way? Where you going?
One thing I would say relating to that is one of the things that has been fixed in 2.8 is the transferring of scenarios and random map scripts. So hopefully with 2.8, we're talking about ideas about units and center map going faster and other things. Now, in previous versions of the game, if you received a random map from another player, it would not appear in your random map list. That's now been fixed. So any exciting sort of variants like that, people can now make and share a lot better and easier than they used to be able to.
Nice. Happy days. There's like
Also, by the way,
yeah.
Blue Lagoon is also added in the ranked map set, so you can actually get it from the quick search, which will be pretty sick.
Fantastic. All right, here's one. For those who think that there are serious balance issues, how can they bring them to your attention? Is there an avenue?
I mean, any of the main forums would do, but you can't just post your opinion and let's just implement it. It's not that simple. A lot of people have very conflicting opinions, and that makes it very hard for us to make a decision on them. So, you can post your concerns about things on the Steam forums, on the Archer Sanctuary, on where else? Reddit even, I guess. I don't know. But
the best way would be to get really high in the ranked elo, and also win tournaments abusing whatever you think is broken, because then it'll show how broken it is. That's the best way. If people aren't abusing it, then it's obviously not broken.
That is
in a competitive sense where like there's money involved and stuff like that. So
yeah, that's what I was looking for. You passed the test. I find it really fun to talk about balance, but I know that or like complain about things because it's like easy. But I know that for the most part, the game's very well balanced, and for the most part, you just have to play better than your opponent to win. And especially at the top levels, it's like that. So if you think something's busted, you think China's busted, go and play China, and
Show us.
beat
Yeah.
everyone.
Wow.
Show us how it's done. Another thing that I thought, I'm not sure if you guys have this already or if it's something for the future, but just on top of the how do you bring stuff to your attention, do you have like stats on all the ranked games for what's winning and what's losing and what the like percentages are in that regard?
we have access to some stats. One thing that would always like to be added later in the future is something like what ESO had, but right now that's not available. The only thing that we can see is the number of games played per civilization and the wins, but it doesn't separate custom wins and ranked wins. But we do have like certain statistics on patch stats, but that's something that eventually, if Microsoft would want to invest in that, would be something that we want to bring to the community.
Cool. Happy to move on from balance. If there's anything else you want
not much
to
to
talk
talk about, to be honest. Minor.
Actually, one of the things that I wanted to talk about were the quality of life updates that the game received, even from Legacy.
Okay.
So we did a good bit of legacy bug fixes, things that we've been dealing with since 2004. Some of the ones might include whenever you research conscripts and levy, that it'll delete the unit that's at 99% waiting in queue. So that will no longer remove that unit from the queue and basically turn off auto queue whenever you research any conscripts levy, and I think there's another one too that increases train speed.
Getting heroic.
That's been
age
fixed.
with,
Right.
The
the
assignment too.
heroic age.
Yeah.
The shift clicking on attacking buildings with squad units will now respect your commands, whether they're being attacked or not, where before they would attack like the very first thing that you said, and then as soon as that's destroyed, they would just start attacking all the units around them, where that will no longer happen. They will now respect your chain commands. And there was another, archers will no longer go to the shift click unit if it dies. So if you have a bunch of archers selected and you're shift click focus firing, if that unit dies, they will no longer run into the middle of the army and die.
That was my favorite trick. You just ruined my favorite trick.
Yeah. And we added
That's okay.
multicast.
I'll just go play Nilla. It's fine. It's fine.
We added multicast for Blessed Construction, auto queue, and now if your command control groups contain empty buildings, you can still use the hotkeys. It'll no longer interrupt that chain process. Where before, like if you had a building that was just being constructed, it would make it so you couldn't use your hotkeys.
That's awesome.
If it was in that selection.
So you can say you have like 10 barracks and you want to auto queue out spearmen. You can hit your control group for the 10 barracks. You can hit your hotkey for spearmen, and then you can hit your hotkey for auto queue, and every single barracks will be auto queuing now instead of having to do those all individually.
Correct.
Insanity. Happy days. Cool. Let's move on then. Online experience. This one's for me mostly because I feel for everybody who has to deal with playing with an Australian who immediately makes a room go up to 300 ping just from our location. But one thing I noticed on Definitive Edition was that you have like your servers for each place. So if you're Oceanic, you can see that you're going into an Oceanic server. But basically, has there been any thought into putting some detail or more detail into whether or not you're joining a potential high ping game? Does that make
As
sense?
of currently, no. You're for now you'll be forced to just check the ping indicator inside the lobbies. And yeah, maybe if we will ever go to a server-side model like H2 Definitive Edition, we could add such a thing. But for now, with the peer-to-peer system, I'm not entirely sure if it is even possible to retrieve that data. But we would have to look into that if it's really something that everyone wants.
Yeah. I think it's like because we have such a small community, it's not huge, but I think it's something that some of the like beginner intermediate players would be more into, because they don't care if they're playing with somebody who's also low level. They just want to have a good experience playing it. Next thing, team game quick search. What's the deal?
That is definitely on a list, but unfortunately still at this time, there is no plans to be doing that right now. But it's high up on our wish list for sure.
Cool. Is the plan to have like on ESO where you had 2v2s, 3v3s all give you like your supremacy rating, or split into multiple ladders, if that's been thought about at all?
I would say that basically both are possible. It hasn't, mainly because we haven't gone down to implementing it yet. We haven't really made a decision, because both could be possible. Like we could do kind of like Voobly has they have their team game ratings. We might be able to do something like that. We might be able to do individual team ratings for if you play 2v2 with a certain person, that would you would have a team rating possibly just with that other person, and different things like that. But that all comes down to basically when we would be implementing it, which, as I said, unfortunately right now we do not have a plan to do so.
Okay. You may have touched on it already in the opening remarks, but what can you say about the multiplayer desyncing issues?
Actually, this patch we have looked into several of those desync issues. We've got a few until like the obvious ones that we could easily reproduce were all fixed. And then we decided to implement a system to actually track the desync, so we can get information from when someone would desync a game or when a game would just randomly desync. We get that information now, and we just have more information to work with for if we want to look into that in the future. But yeah, currently the most annoying ones that have been pointed out by the community have been fixed, such as the desync when someone would leave the game. And didn't matter what kind of player it was, could have been an observer or anything. And the King of the Hill desync. has been fixed right now.
Cool.
There was also the tornado one as well, wasn't
Oh
there?
yeah,
with
right.
The
Yeah.
Danish locale.
Yes, so that's an interesting one. For some reason, there was some combination of letters that was used for one of the god powers, for the tsunami god power as well, and for tornado. And for some reason, Danish computers interpreted that differently than any other locale. So like an English player would immediately desync if they would cast a tornado with a Danish player in their game. That has been fixed now, and you should be able to cast tornadoes and tsunamis safely now again.
Victory.
Really obscure desyncs.
Yeah, I feel like these desyncs have been around, well, they have been around since the beginning of Age Mythology, and they always tended to happen around god powers when people, I mean, it's just my anecdotal experience.
Yeah, another one was when an observer would leave when there was like a god power active. That would also cause a desync too. Because whenever you leave, it kills all god powers, but because they were an observer or something, that code wasn't being correctly executed, so it would desync the game.
So painful.
Wasn't there also a desync with formations or something that you guys fixed, or no?
Yeah, so that's one more obscure one. If you had a formation with villagers, then sometimes the game would desync. Yeah. There's nothing more about that one, but that was just the change from legacy codes to what it is today. So just a change in the tool to make the game that caused that desync to occur.
I see.
The final one I can think of is scenario designers had a problem with a desync with cinematics that got introduced with 2.7. That's also been fixed. This was where if you had a cinematic mode halfway through a map, the game would at random desync. That's also been fixed.
Let's go. Get those scenarios going with all the cinematics. I want to watch a movie. Can we talk about the lobby bugs? Are those fixed, or do we know what's causing them, or?
Some of the lobby bugs have been fixed, and some changes have happened with like scenarios and different options being made available to scenarios, such as like the pause limit, pop cap, and other such options that were originally like turned off, like the shared teams and everything. But for the actual desyncing of lobbies, there was one main cause that was fixed, which was when someone would change their Steam name while the game was open, it would cause a desync in the lobbies to where that lobby would become invalid. That's been fixed. And there's been some connection issues that people should connect easier, or they should get out if they can't connect. They shouldn't be stuck as often in that countdown. But just, I think yesterday, we found out that Non-Tut found that we are still having issues where certain people can't connect to each other unless they restart the game.
Right.
So that's unfortunately still going on, and trying to get a repro for that specific issue is the hardest part about fixing it, is being able to reproduce it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then getting the right information out of it. It's also quite unfortunate because that code has been touched by so many different developers right now that it's all over the place and very difficult to get into. And Master Freedom has done an amazing job so far in fixing several bugs with that. I wouldn't dare to jump into that code as well myself.
The only thing I could ask or add is there any detection for the lobbies to be bugged beyond the players going, oh, no one's joined this game for 5 minutes, maybe we should check?
Unfortunately, no, because to be able to make that detection, would be the same as to be able to fix it almost.
Right.
We would have to basically figure out what the situation is that's happening. One thing, so I do have a very good idea where in the code that this bug is happening, but it's almost like it's a rare race condition where Steam's API will talk to each other and it'll say, okay, this person can talk to this person, but they're kind of, it's almost like call waiting, where they're trying to connect to someone and it's rejecting all other connections while that person's trying to connect to that person. So it blocks each other's connections while they're trying to talk to each other. And unless you like restart the game or it times out, which I think is 10 minutes, you can't. So it's a, like I said, it's a very hard to reproduce issue. And once I can reproduce it enough, then I'd be able to, go through my debugging sessions and all that. But unfortunately, there's just all the logging that's in there has led to nothing, because I basically turned on all the logging for the lobbies and it hasn't turned up anything for me to be able to use. So it's somewhere where there's not logs being enabled. So very obscure issue.
Oh well. Thanks for everything that you've done so far then for that, because it's frustrating.
It's definitely a huge frustrating issue. I mean, it's one that, even I've dealt with many times. So it's something that we want to get fixed as much as possible. And it's something that should happen less with 2.8, because even with like our beta, because the whole way through beta, I haven't seen or heard of lobby issues. And then, of course, right before, we're getting all these patch notes up and ready, winding down the patch, and it's like, oh, now here comes the issues again. So, but, it's something to keep our eye on, and hopefully we can track it down.
Cool. Alrighty, let's move on to the scenario shenanigans. I guess Notad's pretty involved with all of this stuff, or at least knows a lot of it. So you want to tell us about some stuff that people can get their hands on, and stuff that, you
Sure. I've been communicating with mainly with Warrior, but with some of the other devs about trying to get some of the some things, extra commands into the game, which were covering areas that were previously you could something you'd want to do and should be possible but wasn't possible. So an example being, if you're in the editor, you can scale the units, but there's no way to do that in game. So you couldn't ever create a unit during the game that's a different scale. Another example with that is scaling is axis independent. So in the editor, you can only scale the X, Y, and Z coordinates equally. But the actual game itself actually supports axis independence. So an example, so there, again, there's a trigger which you can now use to scale each of the axes at different rates. Other exciting things, we've got much better manipulation of terrain and elevation, which was something previously possible with some hacking with editor mode, but there's now some proper commands to support it. So some of the new things involve, you can now paint terrain of any type you like. You can change the elevation to any level you like. You can paint water on the entire map, although not in an area, but there are workarounds for that. You can change the water color during the game. One thing that's been bugging scenario designers was forcing players to be a certain god and civilization. So an example being, if you made an escape map and you want everyone to be the Kronos god so that everyone has time shift, that is now possible to set during a game. Other ones include Mutation of Units. So this is a little bit different to unit change type, where it's a low-level change to what the unit is. This is how a lot of scenario designers have been making custom projectiles. It simply just says, oh, this Anubite is now a fire giant, and it just carries on acting as it was before, but obviously now being the new unit. There was a command to do that for all unit types, but now you can do it to individual units. Other stuff includes more control over god powers. So one thing that's been annoying me and probably other scenario designers was there was no control whatsoever over the recharge time of god powers. So you wanted to give a player 3 shockwaves. They cast the first one and then have to wait about 5 minutes before they could use the second one. Now it's possible to remove that, so you can use all 3 of them straight away. There's more control over the cloud and lighting. So you can now customize what the clouds look like and the position of the sun, which previously was possible with the position of the sun. Again, it was another hack that's got native support. Other ones, I mentioned scale. You can now tilt units in game to any angle. And the other couple of big ones is animation control. So one of the things that you couldn't do with multiplayer maps, and to some extent single player maps, is set arbitrary animations on units. So you couldn't use cinematic animations full stop on multiplayer maps, which is now possible. You can also, if people, scenario designers who know the editor has a scenario animation viewer where you can click on a unit and change its animation freely based on the type, so attack, idle, that sort of thing. But you can also set the state of the animation. So if you got an Ulfsark, you can give it whatever look and feel you like. So you could have it with certain technologies applied. So you can have one that's a champion one, plus a medium one, plus a heavy one, plus maybe one with a cinematic model. There's all that level of control. Final area, which there's been, is a system for persisting data between scenarios. So you could maybe have a special campaign where you've got a character and your character can say level up. And then when you join the next map of the campaign, you want to carry your character over to the next scenario and you want to keep the level that you had. So there is now a system where you can save data to a scenario and write and read it from another scenario and sort of carry over your progress. That's even if you quit the game and restart it. So as you can probably hear, there's a lot of new features that have been added for scenario designers to use. I made a trigger pack, which is on the workshop, which makes use of all these, but I am sure there's plenty of more available. There's a whole list of commands in the patch notes that will be released with all the commands. So you're not limited to obviously the triggers I've written. There's tons of stuff that I haven't written, which I'm sure there is out there. So go ahead and create to your heart's content.
Man, that sounds awesome. That last thing about being able to carry like levels over or whatever from different scenarios is sick. That can be used to make some really cool ideas. Hopefully people get into it. Anything anyone else wants to say on that?
Population cap has been exposed to data now through the game config, which is now moddable with 2.8. So now you can have 3,000 pop cap instead of 300. You can have 10,000. You can have as much until the game crashes. So that'll be interesting for developers, like scenario developers, to mess with. And you can also now set a unit cost to 0, where before it wouldn't let you do that for some reason. So those are some more things that Nottut has helped us out with in bringing more modability to the game, essentially exposing more stuff to data.
Just to piggyback on
No,
that,
but the config changes will not be compatible with online play. So you will, unless all of you together make the config change, unfortunately.
Yeah, you would all have to have the same mod.
If you want to break the population limit, you're still going to have to use my trigger workarounds for that, for the time being. For people who want to do single player mods, who maybe implement a new civilization and got the gameplay is one that suits a better population, then this change is perfect for that.
Can I ask a little question though? You know, in scenarios, you have an option to change the max population cap setting. Does that now also go beyond 300? Or is that still hard cap to your config?
I'm not aware of that being increasable. Maybe the developers know more. My understanding is it still will cap to the config.
Sorry, what was the question?
In the scenario, you can change the max population cap, but obviously it still is hard stock 300 normally. Is that changing, or will it still
You
be?
would have to have the config changed, and then you can change up to that upper limit, essentially.
Is it also possible now to remove Lush from like Tiny, for example?
Yes.
Yeah,
That can be done with the set the set civilization. Obviously, that would then change the player's god as well. But
That's
for
very
maps
good.
which you don't want the Lush disrupting, and you don't mind changing the player's god, say from Gaia to Kronos or Uranus, then
Yeah,
use
that's very
that
good
to,
because in 2.7 we buffed Gaia Lush, so it grows like it grows fodder. But yeah, that was kind of being a problem in Tiny lately, so gotta fix that probably with some triggers. So yeah, it's very good.
Okay, I was going to ask, in regards to the population thing, you said it was tied to a config file. Are there any plans to allow that to be done in like the advanced, like in an advanced game? So if say someone wants to play just like a supremacy game and they want to have like population of 500, start with 200 open population or whatever, like basically like on Age of Empires 2, where you can fiddle with that a little bit. Is that on the cards?
Oh, that's definitely a change that can be made. Yeah. That, and there were some other things too that we were messing with, but essentially, yeah, stuff like that to give custom games essentially more customability. Like being able to turn like AQ off and stuff like that is all ideas that have been tossed around. Just haven't been within the scope of the patch to be able to do that this time, but definitely possible.
Yes, get rid of it. Turn it off completely. All right. I know you probably can't say anything even if it is on the cards, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Any plans for DLC campaign similar to the Golden Gifts? Or, just basically voice acted campaigns made by you guys, basically?
Yeah, easy answer. We cannot disclose that.
I'm going to take that as a yes. Okay, let's move on quickly. So Notard recently released this really cool tool called, is it Cronny?
Yes.
Feel free to give that a plug and tell us all about it, because I think it's actually really cool.
Yeah, so the Crony project aims to try and bypass some of the limits that the game contains, because there was a lot of things that for scenario designers they couldn't do, but it was data that was in the scenario, it was saved with the scenario, that you couldn't actually change. Now, in what would be nice would be long term for Crony, ironically, to become obsolete and all of these features make it into the main game. However, until then, it does provide you with some extra customizability that previously was not possible. So some examples would be that you can move the terrain beyond the normal height limits. You can change the god of nature and rename Mother Nature to a different name. You can actually override the lobby data that is set on a scenario when you host it. That's a really bizarre one. Essentially, when you host a game, you set up all the lobby data. So there's an option on that to actually override and use a different set of lobby data than what's actually provided, which can have some weird effects, such as being able to change the name of the players, which is utterly weird. Other things involve a few basic operations that are missing, such as being able to mass change the player ownership of a unit in the editor, which is currently impossible. Mass change the unit type, mass scale up units. It's just all the little bits that are just missing from the main game. Painting watercolor, just all these little bits, which long term will be nice if it makes it into the game, but it provides you sort of at least a little stepping stone until that would happen. And that's all done by basically looking at the scenario format and reverse engineering. I make a change in the editor, I see how the scenario changes, and then I work out how to sort of properly read and write that value, and then I turn that into a tool that you can sort of visually use to manipulate. So that's what the project is about, really. It's just bringing to life a little bit more customizability. It's not designed as a replacement, and as I say, it'd be fantastic if long term all the features made it into the actual game, but it's just there as an option.
Cool. I think we all say thank you for all the stuff you've done scenario-wise over the years. Everybody's played your stuff. It's very cool. I'd like to move on to the AI. I don't know what's being touched here, but I did have like the slightest inkling to look into AI files and just see what I could learn recently, and I noticed there was some new things in there different from the base game. I don't know if those are like years old or if they're recent, but if there's anything you can tell us about what you guys are doing with the AI, and if there's any plans to make a stronger AI for new players who are who aren't quite ready for online but want to like play something that might push them there.
Yeah, so besides some code fixes that Master Frieden has done this patch to resolve some AI issues, we have not looked into the AI script this patch. We did add some new AI scripting functionalities that would alleviate some problems that the AI scripters would run into, but the audience for that is quite small. I think you can count the people that write AIs for Age of Mythology on one hand, and yeah, I might, if I have enough time. Yeah, but the thing is, it's quite difficult to make one. Yeah, and like I it's actually how I got onto this project initially, like 5 years ago when the extended edition released. Was because I was one of the last AI scripters around that time. So I was kind of like the only person that could update a little bit. Now looking back, that was when a long time ago, before I was actually decent at programming. So yeah, I always wish if I had some spare time that I could just continue with that AI and maybe release it. I still have one getting dusty somewhere lying around on an old laptop. That can actually execute build orders, which the current AI actually cannot do, and yeah, that will make it a little bit more competitive. Because as everyone probably already knows, is that the way how the difficulty of the AI is killed in the original game and in the extended edition is that you have the easy, moderate, hard, and then you have the Titan difficulty, and the Titan difficulty is basically the hard AI with a double resource boost. So for every resource that it gets another one. And yeah, that will make the AI more difficult because it just cheats a lot. But yeah, it's again something that was not it doesn't fit in the scope of this patch. And yeah, but I'm hoping that it will be possible to do something about that in the future or in my free time, or if anyone else in the community feels like picking up AI scripting, then they can write an AI script as well.
Yes, do it. Make it happen.
The Age 2 Definitive Edition AI was an amazing leap forward in that technology. So hopefully, if we get to definitive edition for Myth, we can have that same leap forward, because that's one of the disappointing things over time, especially after you get to a certain skill level. The AI, you find bugs within it that you can just like beat even the hardest AI very easily because it falls into these certain traps. So that would be a really nice thing to have fixed, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's. Yeah, I think it's just like a really cool thing for or like a just for somebody who wants to get into competitive play and they play one game on ladder and they get smacked by someone and it's not fun. Whereas if you have that incremental step up in a really non-pressure environment, you can definitely get there and learn from what the AI is doing, as opposed to look at this AI and it's like useless.
Right, because I think a lot of people they play, single player first, and they learn from the AI. So the AI is doing bad things that you do not want to do in multiplayer.
Like making houses on the side of the map.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's not the best.
But definitely something to be improved.
All right, let's talk about some design things, if you don't mind. Is there any chance of any units being redesigned, models, the way they work, for example? I mean, not even for example, just any chance of stuff being redesigned in extended edition in the future?
We did rework position. So we changed position from just kind of like being a unit that was slapped in there to more or less fitting the Greek civ line, where now it's a hero. It kind of fits a little bit more in where there's only one available, and it upgrades through the ages like the other heroes do. So, always looking at where we can better integrate units and where things kind of like don't really mesh that well. There's always possibilities to redesign and re-implement things into the game. So that's always a possibility.
Cool. Well, that's good to hear. I thought it was just going to be like a straight no, but hell good. Let's talk about China for a second, and I'm of the opinion that China is fine to be played competitively, and it's a civ that you're gonna have to learn how to play against, and it's gonna be a learning experience, and you can have some issues with it. But for all its faults, it's fine. What I want to know is, how can we make that all the changes that you guys have done seep down into those lower levels where China is still viewed as this civilization which is just banned? I know if you jump into like a 1600 lobby and you select Fuzi, then they're gonna sell you to change or kick you. So
kick you out.
What can we do?
I think a lot of that will fade now that it's going to take a while, because China was broken for so long with the Shannon monks and just converting your entire army faster than you can make it. That was out there for years. So it's going to take a little while for people to understand that that's not how it's played anymore, and that trying to do that strategy really isn't that viable. So that really terrible broken strategy is no longer there. So hopefully once people realize that, then that lame will go away, or that lame view of China will go away. Another thing that might be nice is more people should be reinstalling their DLCs, because you'll no longer get China more on the random god set, because before everyone had the theory that as soon as you install the DLC that you get China more in the random map, where that was kind of true but also kind of not true. What it did is it would take your team and look at all the gods on your team and say it'll pull those gods out of the random pick. So say you had a Zeus on your team, you wouldn't get Zeus. So everybody wasn't playing China, so naturally you would get China.
Sick. There we go.
Yeah, so I reverted that to being random. So now it's completely random. You can get any god at any point in time. It doesn't matter who's on your team. It's back to not being terrible.
That's awesome.
Probably one of my favorite changes, to be honest.
Yeah, me too. Like I have a little wheel that I click on now that I was using because I was like, I can't pick random because I just have to play Chinese. So I had a wheel and I click on it to say which god am I play next game. So that's awesome to know for you random god players.
The nice thing is that it did put in motion, or at least it put on my wish list for future things, to have where you can select certain gods to make a custom random list. So say like you wanted to play like Zeus, Poseidon, but not Hades, and then put like other random gods in there, kind of make your own random custom list of like gods you want to practice or something like that. So that's something that kind of came out of fixing that. So
that's awesome.
Hopefully we'll see that in future patches.
Do that. Make it happen. You've made me excited. Does anyone else have any other opinions on that topic? Community opinion about China, basically? Nope.
I'm kind of hoping that people just maybe start picking up China a little bit more now that, number one, there's really no penalty to playing it, whereas in like people won't get kicked out of your match if you're playing it. The massive lame has been essentially changed. I mean, there's still some lame with scout calves and but it's a lot better than it was.
I want to add that Chinese is never going to be played to the same level as the other civs because, it's first of all, it's locked behind DLC, which some people just don't want to put their money into. Plus, it's not, the game has been out for so long, people have already played it. Coming back to EE now, they want to play the old civs, all the stuff they've already played. I mean, they might try out Chinese, but they're like, oh, I used to play Zeus, I want to go with Zeus. So naturally, Chinese is not going to be played as much, unfortunately. New players might pick it up though, but
yeah,
you gotta make a learning China playlist there, boy.
Yeah, I gotta make the build order. I don't know one, so I can't make one yet.
Well,
make one out yourself.
There you go, learning China.
That's it.
Or just start host some tournaments that are China only.
That's actually a good idea.
Yeah, but the issue with that is then you get to, people will play Chinese, but you don't get to see the matchups against other civs.
No,
but it's just to get people starting, right?
You make them roll a dice and flip a coin, and whoever gets heads has to play China, and whoever gets tails has to play different. All right, let's move on.
Hate China even more.
True. Somebody posted on Reddit about, I don't know about this, but what the issue actually is, but I said, any hope of fixing the Chinese models and the textures? As in, they're apparently worse than the original AOM, and the villagers are holding the resources all the wrong ways. Do you have any idea what that means, and have any comments?
I believe the female villager holding one of the resources upside down has been fixed with 2.8. It's not released to public yet, but that has been adjusted.
Yeah, we have it internally, unless we messed up, of course. But
yeah.
He said in regards to the textures, he said worse compression than original AOM, but I feel like that's a I feel like you touched on that with the balance already and not in the performance already, right?
No, that's maybe referring to like when EE initially was released, like when you would zoom out, then certain textures would be blurry.
Okay.
That has been resolved in patch 2.07. Was some texture filtering issue.
Okay. Well, there you go. So I've recently played the Tale of the Dragon campaign through Ipit's mod, and somebody wants to know, are we thinking of touching the campaign either by you guys or allowing or like just throwing in the mod as the official mod or the official campaign or what have you? Any thoughts on the Tale of the Dragon campaign?
So, like we might, if we ever get to it, then we could look into it, fix it maybe with the help of Ippert. But it's quite dangerous to just release a mod and make it official. Like if there's any profanity in that mod or just any jokes that are not, that are not acceptable for in the eyes of Microsoft, for example, then we'll be in trouble for that. And we just have to be careful when we release community content because of that.
Cool. That sounds fair enough. If it's in the chat saying he's one joke at the end of the campaign. I don't even know if I believe that.
We don't trust it, but it's more or less just, it basically comes down to Microsoft being, obviously it's their brand, it's their IP. We have to very much protect that. So
yeah. Alrighty. So just to clarify, the official answer is if you find time, it will be something you'll work on.
Oh yeah. If Microsoft comes down and says, look, this is something that we would like touched up and fixed up on, then absolutely, I would have no problem spending time on that.
Wonderful. I don't know why I wrote this question here. I guess this is mostly an ease of subscribing to mods thing. As it currently is, if somebody wants to play a mod such as God Mix Up or I don't know, Legends of Middle Earth or whatever, they have to go to the Steam Workshop and do it. They'll see the game in the lobby, they'll try and join. If they don't have it, they'll get the thing saying go and get it. Is there any way to streamline this process so that if you're hosting a mod that they can just download it by saying I would like to have this mod in the game instead of having to go and find it?
Right. So I tried to do some quality of life adjustments. Like I put the facelift in for the in-game mod manager where you can disable all mods, disable all desync mods. Also with ranked, if you tried to start ranked, it'll now tell you to disable all desync mods. That was another thing. But for your question, I don't know how much I can go into detail, but the current mod workshop is using either an old or a wrong API. So those things that you would think would be really simple, like just, oh, this person has a lobby, I want their mod, just put their mod in, restart the game, and join that lobby, doesn't have access to the information you would think it does. It basically says, does their game version match my game version? And it says no, and then it tells you why.
Okay.
This is something that I have noted in detail, and we're planning on telling Microsoft about. This was just basically the mod manager was implemented wrong, and we hope to be able to fix that in the future if possible. But it's one of those things that would need almost a complete overhaul to fix, which is also why we're stuck at the 100 megabytes limit as well.
Right.
So
Yeah.
those are two big issues with that everybody kind of notices. And unfortunately, they are not things that we were able to fix this patch without addressing the underlying problem.
Okay. Well, that's good to know that it's at least you know what's going on. Cool. Someone said something about board animations and not linking up with sounds. I think it was in regards to like the wolf or something. Like we're supposed to have like a howl, and when it was bored, I don't know. Do you understand it?
The ambient sounds? I think the ambient sounds are there. I think they're talking probably about the like tundra wolves.
Yeah, maybe.
I think it's to do with like, you know, when an animal has a board animation, it makes a sound, but it's desynced with the action of the animation. But I don't see it being a huge issue.
Yeah, yeah.
Where like when they're howling, their animation doesn't line up with the actual sound.
Yeah.
I didn't look into that. I'm not really too aware of that issue. I saw Loggy in there that the crown crane ambient has been removed along with the vulture slurping sounds. So, anybody that's playing the beta, if you heard random slurping sounds, that has been removed.
That was hella funny. I was like, "What's happening? I don't understand."
Now we know why Sample Studios did not put those in. It was not a mistake. So we corrected that. But yeah.
So good. I think this is possibly should have been in the balance question, but and it's already kind of been answered a little bit, but I think it's only been touched on with China. Would you ever rework a god power from the base game, like such as Ragnarok? I think I'm of the opinion that the biggest issue with Norse is Ragnarok, in that it's basically a win condition. So you can't buff Norse too much, otherwise they'll just be able to achieve their win condition too easily. But if you were to rework said win condition, you would be able to change them more so. Have you thought about, or would you consider changing the base game at all, even if not Ragnarok and somewhere else?
Well, I think changing I would be against it for the most part, just because, you know, it's kind of iconic on how Rag has always worked, and you don't really want to take that away from people, right? Like, if it truly solves balance issues, then it would be worth considering. But I wouldn't want to go out of my way to change Rag or any god power drastically.
The only one I can think of is Shifting Sands, probably, but it's already been changed so much already.
Yeah.
As for Ragnarok, the only thing I would say is, because it's such a feast or famine god power, you know, it either works or it doesn't, and usually it either kills you or you win the game. While that does seem kind of lame at certain points, there might be like ways to balance that a bit more, but I don't really know if that's the best way to go about it. It might more or less be like changing how the aftermath of Ragnarok works or something like that. I don't know. I mean, it's one of those obscure like, should we completely revamp it? Does it need changed at all, or things like that? So
yeah, I mean, my premise might not even be correct either. Just as my premise is just, you can't make Norse too strong, otherwise, in general, otherwise you have to make Ragnarok weaker.
That's why I'm very weary of buffing Norse any further. Like
Yeah.
Norse have already received a ton of buffs in
Yeah.
2.7.
And
Yeah, like
I
Walker Wood,
must,
for example.
yeah, I must say that it does feel good playing Norse now. Like, I know there's a lot of whiners out there because you lose and you're like, I can't do anything, I'm losing. But I definitely feel like on extended edition that Norse feels good.
Yeah, I prefer Loki on extended edition. Whenever I started playing extended edition, I just picked up Loki, and it just feels like very satisfying to play, in my opinion.
Yeah. Any relics that we could add? I feel like Tyler the Dragon missed its chance to add some cool newer effects for relics into the game, giving like, I don't know, like another sort of monkey head or lion relic, or even a 10% would gather bonus. Just
Right. I would love to do that actually. I think that's a really good idea. I'm a person that loves my relics. I always go around on the map looking at relics and try to capture them. So that's something that I would definitely be interested in doing, and kind of disappointed that I didn't think about it sooner in this patch because I might have been able to put some in there. But definitely something for the wish list.
Yeah, I think it also would be cool if they had like unique looks. You know, like it's a mod on the workshop where each relic looks like differently and they represent what the bonus is. I think that would be cool too for the future, maybe.
yeah, there's so many cool mods on the workshop. Hey.
Yeah.
Let's move on. For those that want to know more about what's going on behind the scenes, where can they go to look for stuff if they're not already aware?
This is a rather difficult question just because the way that we have to work. Microsoft is very secretive. They always have been. They probably always will be. So a lot of times we don't know a lot of things ahead of time. And then for us to be able to pass anything along would just be in or on the Age of Empires website. That would be probably the best area to get official announcements, and then also on the store page.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, Forgotten Empires isn't allowed to, leak anything or,
Get in trouble.
Yeah, we love to, but
we would love to.
We had also cared for our jobs and
We got to keep Microsoft happy.
Cool. How can the community help you guys to make the game better?
Post good bug repros. Best way you can help. Any forum, on Discord, if you see us, just note down the steps that it takes to recreate a bug. If we can't recreate a bug, we can't fix it. As soon as we can recreate a bug, it's much, much simpler to fix. So that would be my best thing to say, because the community did an amazing job over the years. I mean, we had a few years to kind of make up the list, but the community had this huge bug list. A lot of those bugs had, you follow these like 3-4 steps, you will reproduce this bug 100%. It made knocking out those bugs, child's play. It was just 1, 2, 3, done. So that would be my number one thing for the community, is just, okay, how does this bug happen?
yeah, and of course, just generate more content, play more maps, more tournaments, just create a bit of a hype around the game, and put it in a spotlight really, because that will, if there's more interest in the game and Microsoft sees that, then maybe more will happen.
Yeah. Microsoft definitely did notice, 2.7, that a lot of people enjoyed the patch, and even this patch getting a lot of good positive feedback is always good. So that's definitely something that we want to keep delivering, especially, for how long the game has been stagnant. It's very nice to see such a large patch, to be honest. I mean, I think 2.8 is probably the biggest patch Extended Edition has received. So It's
Yeah, for
pretty
sure.
pretty interesting.
This patch has definitely been the biggest thing scenario designers, random map designers have, from my perspective, has ever been since the game's come out. There's never been anything remotely close to this size. Just so many new things you can do now. There's so many irritations that are now possible to resolve and get around. Even something simple, just such as the transfer of maps and random map scripts being fixed, which has been something that's been so frustrating. You host these maps, people say, "Oh, it's a great map, I want to host it," and then they can't find it. So these maps don't get shared throughout the community. So it's just great, even just simple things like that being fixed just makes things a lot better for the community.
Yes.
Yeah, that's also why we included you for this patch, right?
Happy days. So there's that league system thing that I don't think's had any attention for the entirety of EE's life, and it looks really cool when I saw it, and then it wasn't touched at all. Is there any plans for like a Microsoft community event, tournaments, anything you can say or not say?
I would say that would be more or less for us to pose, and then if Microsoft, gives us the go-ahead, then that would be something that maybe Forgotten Empires could do. But there really is no plans for that right now, just because there were other things slated. Getting this patch out was definitely the number one priority for Myth. But a community event would definitely be really nice. It's just a matter of getting the go-ahead to do it. But it does seem like a waste of the league system to just be sitting there and not really used. But the nice thing would be to have like a revolving autonomous system that like maybe every few months there'll be like a new badge available or something, and you could basically do a bulk amount of work at like annually and then just have it go throughout the year or something like that. That would probably be more ideal.
Yeah.
But
I think what Hagrid's got going on with the EE League, I think would be awesome to integrate that into just the league system and have.
That's a good idea too.
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask, how does the league system, like, how is it supposed to function? Because I wasn't quite sure. Because you could do stuff in rated, like you could search for like a league or something, and I wasn't sure how that's even supposed to work.
It's not something that I've looked into too much, but it's something that I might be able to look into in the future, and then if it's something that we can integrate easily into community events, like community hosted events, that would be pretty interesting. It's something definitely to look into.
Sick. Cool, let's do modding. Modding's always fun. So I know there's already been some stuff that's been created within the realm of what you can do with the Steam Workshop, but it all seems to be like a replacement rather than an addition in terms of adding new civs or changing civs. Is there any plans to allow modders to be able to create a sixth civilization to add into the pool for their mod?
Well, there's no plans to do that.
Yeah.
And there will probably not really be a plan to do that in the future.
The amount of work to make that possible is staggering.
Right.
It's not very the engines right now is not capable of doing that. So that would require a lot of underlying work to make happen. It'd be very nice to do, but that's almost kind of like a DE level wish list item.
Right. Okay. Well, that's good to know. That's good to know. something about getting tools to allow special attacks to be modified. I'm not aware of what modding this is or why it's not possible, so maybe you guys know something about it.
Yeah, special attacks mostly have been hard-coded, so there's only one certain behavior, and then you have a few variables that you can tweak, which are defined in the data. It would be really cool to eventually add maybe some specialized scripts that you could basically write your own special attacks in a script or anything. But yeah, this is not really a priority for now, at least. Maybe something for later, maybe for something for DE, but we're not planning on that yet.
It's another one of those engine restrictions, unfortunately. It's just not made to do that.
Okay, we touched on this already, but I guess we can reiterate the file size limit on the Steam Workshop is because of the. You can say it again.
The current implementation. Yeah.
Yeah. So so there is plans to increase the file size limit if it gets the go ahead. Does that make sense? Is that fair enough to say?
If we got to go ahead and to re-implement the mod workshop, yes, that would be fixed. That would be one of the major things that would be fixed. Yes.
Cool.
But that may not happen at all, or it might be one of those DE wishlist things. I don't know.
This one's funny. Open source for AIME? Anyone?
Good joke.
Can you explain why this isn't possible?
That Microsoft owns the IP. They own the rights to it, and I don't think Microsoft open sources anything.
There you go. That's fair enough.
Yeah.
Great. Cool. Can you give us a release date for 2.8, or is that hard sealed?
Yeah. Might have been some communication flaw there, but all we can say is, soon.
Okay, soon TM. Soon TM.
Hopefully very soon. But we essentially, right now we're not implementing like anything new right now, so everything's kind of in the wrapped up stages. So it's just a matter of waiting.
Yeah. And we definitely don't want to repeat the endless beta of 2.7.
Correct.
Yeah, that was really long.
So Microsoft's well aware that beta was too long, but there was also a lot of other things going on. I mean, Definitive Edition 2 release was happening during that time, so there was a lot of things going on. Where now I think what's happening in the world with different things, with COVID and other things, are kind of the factors on when to release this patch. I don't know, but for the most part, then we should be good to go here shortly.
Okay, well, shortly is good. Has there been any news you can give us at all on Definitive Edition for AOM? Anything that hasn't been said or you could say potentially?
Sadly enough, no.
I would say hire me if there's going to be a Definitive Edition.
Yeah, we definitely would love to.
I mean, it would be pretty much like a dream job to be able to do that. Microsoft, they've tossed the idea around definitely publicly. So that's actually probably more what I would take from it, is that they're doing Definitive Edition basically for every other game. Why would they skip it? I think it's just more of a timing thing.
Yeah.
But that's just my own personal speculation.
Fair enough. Fun question. If there were to be a DE, what would you like to have added or removed from the game? Everybody can have a little go.
I was going to say, yeah, if somebody wants to go, because I could spend a few hours on this topic alone, so...
guess from my short answer would be pretty much what was discussed earlier with the dynamic mods. So if someone hosts a scenario, and it can have whatever extra units, civ changes, unit changes, god power changes that you like. You can just join the lobby and play it immediately without having to make any changes to your game. That would just allow for content explosion and sharing just absolutely through the roof. There were just so many cool things you could do. So much stuff that I would want to do in my maps that I just can't do because you can't host it online because of the version mismatch. If you could just simply, make a scenario, I don't know, have Minotaurs goring units across the entire map or whatever weird things you'd like to do, it would be so great if you could just do those and put them onto your scenario and play them. That's probably what I would mainly say. Custom music, perhaps, would be nice. And I say all these sort of nice additions you could add. Be able to just play it.
Yeah, and AoE 2 you can also ban maps, and there's like a new rotating map pool every month. I would like that probably, yeah. And like team game letters and all that kind of stuff be good.
I would probably just like for Chinese to get a proper rework, having original models, animations, and all that kind of stuff to feel complete. As the way the Chinese looks, you can clearly see a lot of the animations and models were reskins and reuses. So that's also been one reason why I don't particularly enjoy playing Chinese compared to the original Civs.
Fair enough. Anyone else?
If you want to go?
Yeah, I'd like one of the features that I would like for the DE or anything would be it just being performant, like just being able to run it on my current laptop. That'd be great.
Yeah, like servers and stuff. That'd be nice.
Yeah, changing the networking model to Definitive Edition 2 has a server-side lockstep model, which is more in tune, kind of like what you were saying a while ago, Boyd, on RTS Sanctuary, about how we want the person that's lagging to basically suffer, not bring everybody else down, which seems to be the modern approach. Yeah. That would be more or less, something that I think would be universally changed. But there's also like more options that can be implemented and stuff like that. But one of the nice things right now is with the past 2 patches, Mario and I have an amazing amount of knowledge with the code base. Like we basically do almost anything we want to do because we put our fingers through almost every portion of that code. So for like Definitive Edition, like we could sit there and just plan it all out and like think about like everything that we would want to do, and kind of like kids in a candy store. So it's something that I'm very excited about and would really love to be a part of because I've been playing Age of Mythology since 2003, 2004, became a part of the online community in 2006 and 2007. And just to be able to like bring that new game, hopefully the Definitive Edition would be like the same level as Definitive Edition 2, because that is an amazing game. If you haven't played, like if anybody hasn't played that yet, definitely go give that a go, because Forgotten Empires and everybody involved on that did an absolutely amazing job on that game. So I would love to be able to see that kind of effort put into like a Mythology Definitive Edition, and I think it would be like amazing.
Yes, I think we're basically done here. I think we covered so much stuff. I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me and having a chat about all this stuff, because I think we all saw the success that Extended Edition had on release was fucking gigantic, and then the fall off was so steep and saddening because of how it was released, and the fact that we having these fixes, and if it's going to be a really functional game again, is really warms the heart. So I want to thank you guys for your work, and I guess the only other thing to be said is, would a GoFundMe or something like this have any influence over Microsoft's speediness of putting out AOM 2 or Definitive Edition, or any of that stuff?
Well, of course, if you give me and Master of Freedom like both 1 million of euros or dollars, then we might be able to push a little bit harder.
So good. So
Maybe if we can get the GoFundMe to buy the IP from Microsoft, maybe. But
just out of curiosity, like, how much would you think we would have to raise? Like a couple 100 million, or like, is that already too much or too little? Do you have any
for the
idea?
IP?
Yeah, just to like own Age of Mythology, just buy it from Microsoft, just the rights, I guess, or
I think it might be beyond that. I'm not sure. It's like their sacred Age of series.
Yeah, I think money is no object for Microsoft in terms of ownership.
I don't think that they would part with it, to be honest. Yeah.
But I can't imagine Microsoft making over $1 billion from owning Age of Mythology, rather than just all right, we'll sell it for $1 billion.
Right. And because whenever you own an IP, there's so much future potential as well that you can't just dish out in a one-time lump sum. That lump sum is done. That's you just max out your potential. Where Microsoft, they could come back 10 years later and rebirth that IP again. So. But
yeah, I think my view is going to be that. My feeling is going to be that we have to show Microsoft that there is an audience for a remake, because that's ultimately going to be making them decide whether it's business-wise worthwhile doing or not. If they know there's going to be loads of people buying it and there's tons of interest in the game, they're going to make one. It'd be silly not to.
Right. My personal opinion is that these patches are a really good sign and a good show of faith from Microsoft that they're like, look, we do know that Extended Edition is not what it should be. So we got last patch 2.7. Basically, we got all the data fixes in, and basically all the stuff that the community has already fixed. They're like, okay, get all that sorted. And then we got 2.8, which was above and beyond. We were able to fix so much, and once those final notes come out, there's still stuff that's not announced yet that we weren't able to talk about. So there's still some goodies in there. But I think it's going to be really, really well for the community, or really good for the community, 2.8. And then, of course, obviously, good PR is always good for Microsoft. So I think positive vibes.
Yes.
Sure.
All right, I reckon we're done. So, cheerio, everybody, and thanks everyone for listening and getting in. Just to repeat, the release date is soon, TM. So we can't wait and get playing games, everybody. We'll be seeing you guys soon, I reckon. All right.
Thank you very much.
Bye bye.
Thanks.